My name is Sally J. Morgan. I have the J because there's a number of Sally Morgans in the world, one of which is an Australian artist who's not me. I was born in Wales. My title is Distinguished Professor of Fine Arts at Massey University. I'm an artist. I'm a performance artist, and my background is in community arts and art as activism. And I moved to New Zealand to work at Massey University 17 years ago from Bristol. Well, it's kind of what my life's about. Is ever since probably the late 90s, is the notion of art as research, because it hasn't always been accepted as research. In fact, some places still don't accept it as research. So I find myself constantly talking about why art is research and why art in and of itself is research. So I'm talking about that, and I'm giving an argument for why we should accept that as a proposition. And then I'm also using a piece of my own work as an example of art, community-based art, as a research project and as a research outcome. So I'll be showing some sort of slides of my work on a loop, and then I'll be talking about the importance of art, not simply as knowledge. Science gives us knowledge, but art gives us something more than knowledge, which is an emotional intelligence, and how that needs to be seen as vitally important to society and to community. So that if we go too far down the road of seeing research as this sort of cold scientific notion of things, we actually start to lose something in the world, which is what art does, which is emotional intelligence. Oh, that's quite a long story. I don't know how much time you got, but I have to give background on this. I started off as a painter, and I studied in Antwerp and in Germany, as well as in Britain. And I became an artist at a time when art was kind of changing, where it was moving from modernism into postmodernism, and I was around at the time where people started to experiment with site-based work, performance art, those sorts of things. And at first I kind of resisted the notion of performance art, because I thought it was really kind of up itself kind of thing. It was like people getting naked and inserting things into various orifices in their bodies and throwing themselves around, and I thought that this had no meaning. The reason that this became important to me is that as a young artist, I was very political, and in a different way to the previous speaker, I considered myself a political activist. I'm also gay, and I'm also grew up in Britain as a working class woman at a time when being a working class woman, it was pre-feminism, was quite a tough call to be successful. So my practice moved from painting into working in what was then called community arts, and I worked in neighbourhoods, quite a political way. So we would make films about things that were going on with people, political things. We would get people to actually make those films, and then we would show them, and they would be part of political action. So my background is in a sort of community arts practice, which is about political activism, that would take a theme and then work with it as a kind of activism. And as time moved on, I got more and more interested in a whole range of things. Another thing you need to know about me is that I also have a master's degree in history, and I've spent time as an archaeologist. And so I come at things with these things as part of my background. So being very interested in histories of places, histories of people, oral histories, and using those as part of my artworks. And also later on making performance works that were about, and this is one I'll show today, which is a combination of installation and performance which went on for over a period of 5 days in a festival. About 12,000 people actually came through and saw this work, which was an interrogation of war and memory, and was based on me doing a piece of work around my father's death. He died of a brain tumour in about 25 years ago. But while he was dying, he thought he was back in the war as a bomb aimer. And so there was this very kind of painful and rich set of metaphors around death and war that started me thinking about the fact that I was a bomb aimer's daughter. He was a bomb aimer in the Second World War. And the relationship of women and the general population to sending young men to war. So the piece enacts a ritual smashing of small airplanes that pile up and pile up and pile up. And as part of that piece, people were invited to throw a plane into the back of a container where it would smash, and then think about what that meant to them. And it's very hard to explain because you need to have been there. But I do try and explain it in my talk. What was apparent from that was that although talking to you like this, it seems like quite strange and complex, actually people got it very quickly. They understood very quickly that this was a symbolic enactment of war, and are thinking about how they felt about throwing that plane as it smashed is like being the people that stay at home and send the young men to die. So all of my work has this kind of relationship between history, between notions of archaeology, and sort of social statements, and a kind of collaboration with the public in making the meaning in the work, if that makes any sense. Well, it's an interesting question. I mean, it's basically what I do, in a sense. And in a sense, it's what all artists do, because you're constantly thinking about your place in society, and you're thinking about the people that you're working with, and you're thinking about a community that's kind of at the receiving end of the work that you make. And particularly for me, because I do things in public context with audiences. You know, at this festival that I was just talking about, the audience are just people walking past. They're not people who are coming to a gallery. They're general public who come across something that's happening, and the challenge for the artist is to intrigue them, to have a relationship where they want to get engaged. And for me, artwork without that sense of interaction with the community, with the public, with society is, I wouldn't denigrate people who made work that didn't interact, but to me the real power of art is in its is in the community engaging with it, understanding that what they're able to say through it, and also what they can understand through it, and that art is not some kind of weird thing for people in galleries. It's actually something that's important to all of us and that everybody can engage in. And when I say art, I mean any kind of art. I mean whether it's writing or music or visual arts. To me, it doesn't make sense if it's not community-based in a way. Well, I think that's interesting. I mean, I work in a university, so I don't work in an ITP. But as far as I'm concerned, you know, active research should be part of all education. All educational institutions should be in a place where the people who are teaching are actively engaging in the things that they're, you know, at the front end of the knowledge of the things that they're doing with the students. And so that makes sense to me, whether it's in a university or a polytechnic or wherever. There are borders around knowledge and culture and all of the things that make us human that seem to me to be really important as part of education. And so an education without applied research, be it a university or an ITP, would seem to be lacking richness. It would be two-dimensional rather than three-dimensional. So I can't say other than that, really. It's not science, but all research is not science. Okay, so research in every discipline has its own modes and forms, and they take us to a new place. So research in the creative arts is something that takes you to a new place. So something is happening through that you understand through the art. And by the end of it, you hope your audience, and certainly an audience that would be a knowledgeable audience, would say, oh, something happened there that I wasn't expecting. Or something has been displayed through this that has given me a new understanding or given me a new position. So the artwork is a sort of very carefully thought out set of stages around what it is to go to war. And the planes become symbolic of the quest for war, and also the individual soldier, airman, who is broken by war. I mean, one of the beautiful moments for me, which I'll talk about in the talk, is when a young Maori woman took a plane. People wanted to throw the planes. They really wanted to throw the planes. They're about this big, they're brittle, they wanted to smash them. And she threw it and smashed it, and she was immediately sad. And this happened with a number of people. And I said, what are you feeling? And she said, this is what we do, isn't it? We send them to war, they get broken, and they can never be mended again. And this was a moment of deep empathy for this person. Now, the research product was that I wanted that to happen. I was making an artwork where my intention was that the audience would interrogate what they'd done. You know, some people threw it and it was great. Some people felt so guilty, they would come back day after day to talk and to watch this happening. And one instance was of an old man who he used to come, for days he just sat and watched. And then he came and he spoke to me, but really quietly. He said, I was in the war. And he said, this is really, I really understand what you're saying, and I'm going to bring my friends to see this. So it kind of spoke for him. Now, this isn't science. This isn't this, and that means that. This is art, and art goes beyond knowledge, it goes to feeling. So the task for the artist is to intelligently and systematically produce something that is original, is new, and does something perhaps profound. Each discipline has a different version of what research might be. You know, mathematicians just do amazing theorems, and we look at it and we go, we don't know what that is, but we think that must be clever. That must be clever because I don't understand it. Whereas if an artist does something you don't understand, the assumption is it's not clever. It's quite an interesting kind of hierarchies of value around these things. So I'm not surprised you asked me that, because that's a really common question. How's that research? I don't know what only entertaining means. You know what I mean? If when I see art, I could be on my own in this, but there'll be other people who agree with me. When I go to a gallery in Europe and I go and look at a painting, I really want to be moved. I really want to feel something profound. And then for me, that is art. Maybe that's the difference between great art and okay art. You know, but I think, where would you see art that was only entertaining? What would that be? Liking the colours can be more than entertainment. I mean, you could be actually moved by that. I mean, I think about the painter Mark Rothko. I don't know if you know his work, but so many people say they stand in front of a Mark Rothko painting, which is just colours, and they feel spiritually moved by it. You know, and that's taking it to a whole other level, and that's the sort of level that I think most artists would aspire to get to, where there is something that you feel something through the colour that speaks to you in a particular way you can't put into words, but you feel really as though you're in the presence of something spiritual or profound. And I think there's nothing to say you can't just like stuff. there's nothing to say you can't just like stuff. It's anybody can respond to things in any way that they want, but there would be some things that would seem to work on another level, and like everything, not always for everybody. It's not always going to be the same people. But if you get enough people who are really interested in something, it's like sport, really. You watch a game of rugby, and some people spend hours talking about that little move that somebody did, and some of us will go, "Oh, it was all right. I liked it," And it's the same kind of thing. It's like some people will get into the detail and be really interested and good on them, and others will want to just skim over the surface. So there's no, you don't have to sign up to be profound, but that should exist in the world, and it may not be there for everybody, but it should be something that we have the opportunity to experience. I try not to talk about whether they're lesser or greater artists. I just talk about work that I can respond to and that other people respond to. I might look at it and go, "Nah, everybody likes it. Nah, that's okay." There are artists that people consider great that my taste says, "Well, okay, I can take it or leave it." But there's a difference between taste and something that's been constructed very carefully to convey something very particular to people who want to take the time to access that, and who have who want to be the equivalent of the rugby buff, who really are interested in how many times people had a tackle or whatever. There's a whole range across the audience. It doesn't mean it has to be homogenized. And I would hesitate before I said somebody was a bad artist just because it didn't match my taste. But it's the same with novels, isn't it? There are the things you buy at the airport that'll keep you, entertained on the plane, and that's okay. And then there are great novels, and they both have a place in the world. Neither should obliterate the other. We need them both. We need them both. I'm really interested in profound art, and I get bored very easily with art that doesn't do something tricky for me. But that's because I'm a geek. I'm an art geek, and we exist, and we tend to be people who do research in art, and we perhaps often talk to one another. But I'm very interested in works where it works on a lot of levels. So you can, for instance, if somebody came to my piece with the planes and they came and they just threw the plane and it didn't affect them, but they went away going, "Oh, I had a good time." I don't mind that. I don't blame the audience. I don't mind that. They had a good time. I like it that they came in and they could engage. But I become particularly happy when somebody sees what I've wanted them to see in it, and engage at a number of levels. But I wouldn't judge anybody for whatever level they came in to respond to it. And if they just like the colours, that's cool too. It doesn't happen to everybody. I mean, I have been in galleries where I'm waiting to go and stand in front of the Rothko to get that buzz. And I remember a young couple standing in front of it, and I could just see from their body language, you could tell from their body language, they're just going, "Oh yeah, what's the big deal? What's the big deal?" And the girl saying, "I just don't get it. I just don't get it. It's just a brown painting." And he went, "Yeah, okay." And off they went. It's like, yeah, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. But, we're not all the same people. And the amazing thing about Rothko is that he worked it out so a significant number of people do get that response. It's not a failure if you don't get the response, but he was onto something, because there's a high proportion of people who will get the response to his work. When I was a young artist, that's what all my community arts was about. I hated galleries. I thought they were elitist, and I thought, art should be on the streets and so on. And it's always been like that. And I think it always will be like that. There will always be that kind of side to the art world. But as a human being, what I learned to do when I was an art student was I'd just go into a gallery, and I would not look at any writing about what I was supposed to like. I'd just walk around the gallery, and as soon as something grabbed my attention, that's what I'd stop in front of. And I was amazed how many times it turned out to be like Leonardo da Vinci or Michelangelo, or big names. And I was thinking, that's quite interesting, isn't it? There might be something in this. And I always remember hating Vincent van Gogh because I'd only ever seen him in little pictures. And then actually the first time I saw a Vincent van Gogh picture, and it was exactly the same thing. I didn't go looking for him. I'm walking around until a picture just goes, look at me. And one of his paintings that I'd only ever seen as a little photograph just hit me in the face because of the way it used colour. It was extraordinary. I was walking through the gallery, I turned and saw it, and before I knew it, I must have been standing like that for about at least 5 minutes. I was like, wow, that is extraordinary. So there's something in some of these recognised artists, but then there's a whole bunch around, there's a whole load of stuff, which to artists is very annoying, because, you know, we never make the money out of the art. You know, by the time there's money being made out of it, it's in a collector's hands and it's in a vault somewhere, and it's no longer art, it's a banknote. And I know some really well-established artists who are in no way rich. I mean, if people knew how the system worked, they'd be quite shocked, I think, about who actually makes the money out of the hyping of art. It's not the artists. Well, very rarely is it the artists.